Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode for this podcast. Yes, I am back from vacation. Apologies for no episode on Monday. Was enjoying a nice day on the beach. I thought I was going to have time for one. I'll apologize on that. Again, that will not be the case moving forward. We will be 5 days a week until free agency and the draft. I have a lot to get to for today's episode. We're going to go into the NHL Awards, what my ballots would have been if I did have a vote on the PHWA. Also get to the latest Penguins news. Elliotte Friedman went on the Pat McAfee Show today with some updates on Kris, Letang, and Evgeni Malkin. Also had a tidbit on Marc-Andre Fleury. So we're going to get into that and potentially do a season review for one of the other Penguins defensemen. Hint, it looks like it's going to be one of the bottom pairing defenders. So we're going to get into all of that coming up here right after this drop.
You're Locked On Penguins, your daily podcast on the Pittsburgh Penguins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am your host, Hunter Hodes. Remember to follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. You can also follow the show's Twitter at LO_Penguins. And of course, thank you all so much for making this your first listen of the day. So, a lot has happened since, I last talked to you all on Friday, the Stanley Cup final, Colorado up 2-1 on the Lightning. I think everyone knew the Lightning were not going to go away quietly, right? I made this comparison on social media last night when I was still down in Florida. They're like Michael Myers in the Halloween movies. When you think you have him dead, he comes right back out and says, surprise, I'm still alive. So that's basically the Lightning at this point. A very good performance from them. If Andrei Vasilevsky is able to figure this out, and Darcy Kemper potentially continues his struggles, this could go sideways in a hurry for the Avalanche. I still like the Avs right now in this series. That they've been playing very well. They're overall they're 14-3 through 17 playoff games, but they're going to have to find that other level in Game 4 to potentially take this back 3-1 and then potentially end it in Game 5. Otherwise, let's get into the big Penguins news of the day. And so I've never seen Elliotte Friedman go on the Pat McAfee Show. He usually brings on Mike Rupp, in other sports, Ian Rappaport, Shams Charania of The Athletic. But this is the first time I think that Friedman has ever come on. And obviously, Pat McAfee, for those that don't know, he is from Pittsburgh, born and raised a Yinzer. He is a diehard Penguins fan, likes the Pirates too. I'm sure has some ties to the Steelers, even though he never played for the Steelers. But, he has always loved hockey. Has always said Sidney Crosby's the best player in the history of the league, even though, top 5, but I won't go number 1. But he did bring Friedman on, and he discussed some Penguins topics. And, the first one I'll get to before we touch on the Letang and Malkin stuff is that it sounds like there is a chance that Fleury may return to the Penguins, potentially to back up Tristan Jarry. And I have touched on this during the offseason. I haven't touched on this in a while, so I'll relay those thoughts again here. The only way I would take Fleury back is if it's like a 1 to 2 year deal for like $2 to $2.5 million per. Otherwise, if he's asking for 3, 3.5, 4, forget it. I mean, he really was not good this season for both Chicago and Minnesota. Jarry is the future. I think at this point he's had a better season than Fleury. And, I also think if Fleury were to return, that's a lot of added pressure on the starting goaltender. Like, wow, I have a franchise icon behind me that basically everyone wants to see playing. And, even though I'm the number 1 guy and I just had a great year, some players falter in those situations. Some players overcome it and they have great years. But, do you want to take that risk that Jarry could falter? I mean, sure, Fleury is a good stopgap option, but, again, it all comes down to the money. I'm sure they could agree to a 1 to 2 year term, but this guy is coming off a massive contract, I think, with Vegas and everyone, where he was getting what? $7.5 million or something like that. How much of a pay cut is he willing to take? That is my question with that. I would personally go after someone like Braden Holtby. I think you can get him for cheaper than $2 million a year, potentially maybe like 1 to 1.5 for like a year or something like that, just because his play has obviously tapered off a lot throughout his career. I just think, the past is the past with a lot of these things. I don't know. Would like 80% of the fan base love it? Sure. A lot of people my age grew up with Fleury because he was the first, one of the first core, to come through here. Then Sid got drafted, then Gino, obviously, then Letang and Kunitz and all those guys. But I still think Fleury deserves a chance to start probably somewhere, and I'm sure he could take a deal on like a middling team. Say I'll throw a team out there, Buffalo or something like that. The Sabres are looking to be better next year. They had a really nice end of the season. They have a lot of goaltending questions, I think. I could definitely see them being one of the teams that potentially goes after him, and they will have more money to throw at him. I mean, this is a Sabres team that I don't even think has reached the salary floor at this point. So, overall, I would welcome it if the price is right, but I also think that there's too many, there's other goaltenders out there that can do what he does a bit better. And to be frank, you can probably get them for a bit cheaper. Now, getting to the Malkin and the Letang stuff, I'll start with Malkin. It sounds like they've agreed on term, and that is 3 years. For those that don't know, Sidney Crosby's contract, his is up in 3 years. So they're thinking, which is the obvious right here, which I'm about to say, they want to tie Malkin and Crosby's careers together. They want them to go out at the same time. But the biggest hiccup right now, it seems to be, is the money. I do not know what the Penguins are offering him. I also do not know what Malkin is asking. We'll play a little bit of a hypothetical here. Say Malkin's asking for 7.5 to 8. Do you do it? I would kind of say no. I think the sweet spot for him is 6.5 to 7. I don't think right now, with how he played last year, he was still a very good player. I don't think he is worth $7.5 to $8 million. Could you have to stomach it and maybe give in a little bit? Sure, but I feel like for $8 million, are you going to get that kind of value for the next 2 years for someone's 5-on-5 play? That's fine, but could potentially decline even more. Obviously his bread and butter, he's great on the power play. Was a point of game player this year, but do you expect that to continue for the next 3 years? And again, I love the player. I want them to bring him back. I think there's probably no one else on the free agent market that can do what he does. But, sometimes you may have to say no if the demand is a bit much. And that's what it sounds like Ron Hextall is doing right now. It sounds like he's playing hardball with him, even though I'm sure he would probably have, what's the word I'm looking for? He would have no problem going out and signing Vincent Trocheck to like a 5x6, but no, not even 5x6, like a 6x $6.5, $7 million contract. That's a player that's not even going to come close to doing what Evgeni Malkin does on a nightly basis. And also, it just seems like a total Ron Hextall move, to be honest with you. So, I definitely think there are limits with Malkin's asking price. It definitely does not sound good right now, as we are almost 3 weeks away from NHL free agency opening. But I also don't think it's, the kiss of death that someone making it out to be. There's still time. Again, the news is not great, but, it's all a matter of, can the two sides get close enough where, maybe one has to give a little bit more than the other. That's the big thing I'm looking for. Sure, Nazem Kadri is out there to sign free agency, but do the Penguins want to pony up 8.5 to 9 million to pay him? That's the big kicker there. JT Miller is going to be available. Do the Penguins have the assets to acquire him? Probably not, even though he would be a great replacement for Malkin. I just don't think the Penguins would have, what Vancouver would want in a trade. And then lastly, Friedman said, it sounds like the Penguins and Letang, they're about $1 million to about a 1.1 to 1.2 million apart. So 1 to 1.2 mil. That's not bad. The updates are continuing to get better with Letang than they are with Malkin, which again, I think shows that Letang is the biggest priority, and that, they want to get him out of the way before circling back to Malkin, and really, I think, diving deep into that negotiation. I've honestly kind of changed my tune at this point. In my opinion, I think it's more likely that Letang comes back and Gino walks. That's my pure speculation right now. It's my opinion. Could both be back? Sure. Could the opposite happen? Sure. Could none of them be back? Sure. But right now, my gut is telling me that I think they find a way to get Letang done. But, with all these updates, with all these bad updates on Evgeni Malkin, I'm not really feeling super confident in it. So that wraps up this first segment of the Locked On Penguins podcast. Coming up in the second segment, we're going to get to the NHL Awards tonight, where a couple of Penguins finished in regards to these respective awards and, what my top 3 to top 5 ballots would have been. But before we get to that, how our friends at Built are always coming out with amazing new flavors. Well, this time Built has surely outdone themselves with their new mud pie flavor. And for the first time ever, Built is introducing the new mud pie flavor in both mud pie bar and mud pie puff. Not sure what mud pie tastes like? Well, if you're a chocolate fan, you better sit down for this. The new mud pie bar is rich whipped cream and chocolate mouse, smothered in 100% real chocolate and topped with cookies and cream crumble. You've got to try the mud pie as soon as possible, and you need to hurry because the mud pie bar and the puff, they're only available for a limited time. You can visit built.com to taste this deliciousness for yourself. And you can also go to built.com and use promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off your order. That's promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. All right, I'm back here on this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am your host, Hunter Hodes. You want to follow me on Twitter, Hunter Hodes. Follow the show's Twitter at LO_Penguins. So the NHL Awards were tonight. There really weren't too many surprises outside of Sidney Crosby not even getting a single vote for the Hart Trophy. I'm fine that he wasn't a finalist. I'm fine that, he didn't get like one third place vote or something, but you're telling me that he didn't finish top 10 to top 15 in the league after he just had one of the best seasons in his career. Let's dive into the numbers a little bit here. 31 goals, 84 points in 69 games. Last year had 62 points, 55 games. He was well over a point a game yet again. Last year, this is the funny thing. He finishes 4th in the Hart Trophy vote last year after 62 points in 55 games, plays basically a full season, 84 points in 69 games, and does not even get top 10 to top 15 in the Hart. What are we doing here? I understand that vote was probably the hardest vote of all the awards. Trust me. My ballot, I honestly would have had Shesterkin winning it. I think he was the most valuable player in the NHL this year. Without him in that kind of season, the Rangers probably do not even make the playoffs. He would have been my number 1. I would have had Matthews at 2. I would have had probably McDavid at 3. And then I would have had Johnny Gaudreau at 4. And I would have had Roman Josi at 5. And I'm going to get to Roman Josi in just a sec because he would have been my Norris Trophy winner if I had a ballot. But it's just, and this goes to show that, all the NHL writers, the PHWA, they vote on most of these awards outside of the Jack Adams and the Vezina. The Vezina is voted on by the general managers. I think the Jack Adams is voted on by a bunch of broadcasters. I'm pretty sure. I'm probably missing another award or two, but most of these awards are voted on by the writers who cover the various teams around the league, media members and all that. But this just goes to show that I think a lot of these writers just don't watch any other NHL games outside of their own team, because we can look at the Hart Trophy. I'll read you all the list. Matthews, McDavid, Shesterkin, Gaudreau, Huberdeau. That's your top 5. I'm fine with that. Rosie's at 6. Kirill Kaprizov, Cale Makar, Leon Draisaitl, that's fine. Alex Ovechkin had a great year. Steven Stamkos gets 6 fifth place votes. Barkov gets a 4th and a 5th place. Jason Robertson gets 3 fifth place votes. JT Miller gets 1. Matthew Tkachuk gets 1. What are we doing here? I mean, a lot of those players do not have anything close to the level of season that Sidney Crosby did. He dominated in basically, every underlying number out there. And you're telling me he can't finish top 15 in the Hart? He's finishing below guys such as, again, Miller, Matthew Tkachuk, Jason Robertson, Steven Stamkos, Sasha Barkov. All these are great players, but I think people really need to take into account just how great Sid was this year. Probably one of his best seasons of his career. So that was definitely surprising, to say the least. Again, that would have been my top 5 for the Hart. The Calder Trophy, I would have had Maury Seider winning. That's not even, I think, a question for me. At this point, he was just incredible. I would have Robertson right up there too. Michael Bunting, that probably would have been my top 3. That's for sure. Probably would have had Jeremy Swayman at 4. And well, actually, I'm probably being stupid right now. Zegras would have been my 2. Bunting would have been up there at probably 3. Swayman at 4. And then I'll come back to it. I just had it in my brain and it's just like totally screwing that up for me. But for the Vezina, the GMs vote on this, but they got it right. 29 of them of the 32 voted for Igor Shesterkin. How in the heck did that guy not win unanimously is beyond me. The other 3 first place votes went to Frederik Andersen, Andrei Vasilevsky, Ilya Sorokin. I mean, did Lou Lamoriello vote for Sorokin? Did Julian Brisebois vote for Andrei Vasilevsky? Did Don Waddell vote for Frederik Andersen? I don't understand why people have to be so petty here. He should have won unanimously. Now, the Norris is interesting. For that ballot, mine would have been maybe a little bit different from others. I would have had Yossi winning it. I mean, he put up Paul Coffey-like numbers this year, but one of the best seasons by a defenseman I've ever seen for as long as I've been watching the sport. Well over 90 points, was a juggernaut in the offensive zone, great defensive metrics. It is weird that he had more first place votes than Kel McCarr, but still lost. That's all I'm going to say. I don't understand that. I would have had Yossi 1, McCarr 2, Fox 3, McAvoy 4, and I would have had Letang 5. That's maybe a bit being biased there, but it's funny because Victor Hedman, he finished top 3 in the Norris voting, but he had a better season this year than he did last year when he won the award, and I think that was just getting him his Norris Trophy. And again, I think a lot of these writers just do not watch a lot of other hockey. I've always had that take for as long as I've been watching the NHL Awards. Hedman was a lot better this year, and probably deserved to finish in the top 5. You can certainly argue it, but again, I would have had him outside my top 5. I would have had Yossi, McCarr, Fox, McAvoy, Letang. Kris Letang did finish 7th in the Norris Trophy voting. Congratulations to him. 18 fourth place votes, 19 fifth place votes. I know there's a segment of the fans that are going to be mad about that. Ignore them. They're wrong. At the end of the day, they're wrong. Have them look up the numbers. He deserved finishing in the top 7 for that, and I would have had him in my top 5 for my ballot. Ted Lindsay, that's voted on by the players. Austin Matthews won that. Congratulations to him. And Matthews really cleaned up the awards tonight. He also won the Rocket, won the Hart. Again, I personally I would have had Shesterkin winning that one, but at the end of the day, I don't have a vote. And then I saw the GM of the Year award was the finalists I think were announced. Joe Sakic, Julian Brisebois, very true deserving, and Chris Drury. And it's like, wow. Chris Drury made a bunch of meme moves over the offseason, has a few good moves at the trade deadline, and all of a sudden he's in consideration for GM of the Year, which is just hilarious. So I can't wait to see if potentially if he doubles down during this offseason, because his offseason moves didn't work. He just had a god-tier goaltending performance from the best goaltender in the league, arguably the best goaltender in the league, a amazing power play, and that's basically it. But yeah, I guess that's up for consideration for being the GM of the year at this point. But that wraps up this segment for the NHL Awards. Mostly everyone's ballots that I saw, well, some I saw were fine. Others, I'm just like, man, like people are just showing their butts. That's the PG version. I will say that people are really showing their butts out there with, I think, how little, they watch the sport as writers around the league. Again, that's just my take on that. Coming up in the next segment, we're going to get into Chad Ruhwedel's season review for the Penguins as we continue. We're almost done with that, to say the least here. We only have a couple more defensemen and then some of the other players that were called up during the season, and then we will basically be done with that, and we're going to really start prepping up for the draft. I'm starting to get more into it here. I've been doing a little bit of some scouting reports, watching a little bit of some of their highlights and stuff. I definitely have a couple of players that I think could be in play here for the Penguins. My good buddy Jason, J_A155, has been helping put together a scouting list for me as well to see how it compares, and we're going to get into that coming up here in the next week or two. But again, Chad Ruhwedel season review, that's coming up right after this commercial break. All right, I'm back on this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am your host, Hunter Hodes. Remember to follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. Follow the show's Twitter at @Elliotte_Penguins. So let's get to Chad Ruhwedel's season review here, if I can just make sure I got the numbers up. And I did. Full 78 games, played almost 1,100 minutes. Was a hiccup there. At 5v5, when he was on the ice, the Penguins had close to 54% of the shot attempts, 50% of the actual goals for, 56.3% of the expected goals. That is the second best of his career. Scoring chances-wise, 54.8%. That's almost as good as where it was last year. High danger-wise, 57% of those chances. That's one of the best marks for his career. 50% in high danger actual goals for. I don't think enough people talk about him enough for how good he was this season. Always reliable as a number 5, number 6 defenseman. And, he was ready for this going into the season. I openly wrote about this, when I was doing some work for Full Press Hockey. And one of the topics I wanted to dive into was, the battle between Mark Friedman and Chad Ruhwedel. Who should win that number 1 spot? And, in my view, it was a slam dunk that Ruhwedel should win it, especially with how his underlyings were coming into this year, plus 50% in shot attempts, plus 50% in scoring chances, high danger chances, defensively, expected goals against per 60, one of the best, numbers on the team. I believe top 3 among all Penguins defensemen. High danger chances against, he was not on the ice for a lot of those either. He was just a rock. And the fact that the Penguins are only paying him not even $1 million to have to have those great numbers, it's a miracle in my eye. He was so freaking good this year. And, he was a perfect complement to Mike Matheson, because you all know Matheson is a total chaos player. He great offensively, defensively, he'll have his screw ups, all that jazz. But, Ruhwedel, he was always covering up for his mistakes when he would make them. And, he was just that steady partner that I think Matheson has been missing in his career. And that's why that pairing just works so good together. And, sure, Ruhwedel didn't bring a lot of offense, or counting stats to the table wise, but, he still scored a few timely goals and the team needed him to. I mean, he was getting a lot better at jumping into the rushes a lot more this season. There was probably, 2 to 4 goals where, he came down from the blue line. No one really saw him. And, he was able to bury the puck, from 10 to 15 feet out. I think the biggest one that I remember was when the Penguins, they were down 4-2 to the Flyers, and that was Sidney Crosby's 500th goal. And the Penguins, they make it 4-3. 30 seconds later, Ruhwedel comes down that pointed spot from the point, 10, 15 feet out, buries the tying goal. That was, I think, actually his first goal of the season. The Penguins then win the game in overtime, 5-4. And it was just like, wow, if he can continue to do that, I mean, then it opens up, more opportunities here for him to be good in the offensive zone. But, he was always good at the breakout, carrying the puck up the ice, defensively in his own zone, was never really pinned in there, did not really make a lot of mistakes. He's always been a very serviceable player. I remember, I had Josh Yohe on here, and, I think when Jacques Martin was one of the assistant coaches, he always raved about Ruhwedel, saying, it's a shame that this guy's not in the lineup all the time. You guys don't know what you're missing when, even though he's being scratched. And, I think we can all see that now, especially with how he played in these 78 games during the regular season. I mean, he was absolutely spectacular for this team, one of their best defensemen this year. And, it's fine that he's doing this in a bottom pairing role. Could he play on the second pairing? Sure. Is he a top pairing guy? Absolutely not. Played in all 7 playoff games this year. Got a little bit, hemmed in 42% of the shot attempts for the Penguins, but, 4 goals for, 2 goals against, that's a very good number. 50% of the expected goals. Scoring chances wise, only 46% of those. 52% of the high danger chances, and only when he was on the ice for 1 high danger goal against. So a mixed bag there, but still, most of those I would say the majority of those numbers are better, than the others. I really cannot say enough good things about this player. I would give him a solid A- this season. Honestly, I will probably give him an A. I expect him to contribute yet again for this team next season. I expect him to put up similar numbers to the ones I discussed earlier on in the show. And he's going to be a serviceable player for years to come. And if he continues to sign those cheap contracts, the Penguins will continue to have a bargain on their third pairing, because those are the kind of moves that championship teams need to make, especially when they spend up to the salary cap year after year after year. You have to find your depth guys for cheap, and they have to be at least serviceable. And Ruhwedel was at least all that and more. Can't be more thrilled, with the season that he had. So that'll do it for Tuesday's episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'll have another episode for you all on Wednesday, and then Thursday and Friday of this week. We're getting close to the end of the regular season. 3 weeks away until free agency. Only a couple weeks away from the draft. We're still pumping out content here. Keep it right here on Locked On Penguins. I got everything about this team coming for you throughout the offseason. Before you know it, it's going to be opening night, and I hope to see some of you all there in Pittsburgh next year. I will 100% be there for a game to hopefully meet a few of you all, and maybe I'll buy you all a drink and something like that. But again, thank you all so much for listening. Really appreciate it. And you can follow me on Twitter, Hunter Hodes. Follow the show's Twitter, @Norris Penguins. And until next time, I'll talk to you all soon.